now standing in front of St. Peter's Church. Normally for the purposes of the tour, we'd be starting on that side of the street and then walk over. For the video, we're just going to start here. Now they think that this church was built around the founding of the city as a wooden structure. Presumably it was burnt down a few times. And around 1189 they think that they built a stone structure here, which has more or less remained, though they've also had several incidences with fire. Now, you may notice something particular about this church, in that it has both red and black bricks all along the church building. Now, you might think that that's just there for the sake of art or appearances. Actually, when the church was burnt down in 1843, a lot of the rubble collapsed here, and they went to rebuild it. They realized that a lot of the bricks were actually in pretty good shape, only that they had been charred. So instead of getting rid of all of these bricks, they decided to place them into the church when they rebuilt it, which is why we have this actually rather appealing design. I quite like it. I'm going to step over here real quick while this bus gets off. Now, the church was originally a Catholic church, and then when the Protestant Reformation came to Europe, it converted to Lutheranism, along with the majority of Hamburg. Now, Hamburg was a rather tolerant city. Throughout this time period, there was a lot of strife, persecution, and violence between the different segments and factions of Christianity. And Hamburg was largely untouched by this, both because it had some very strong walls and also just its general location. And this was actually a great boon to Hamburg, because throughout the rest of Germany and in what became the Netherlands, there was warfare. Other Lutheran merchants were being prosecuted and persecuted. So instead of them staying there, they decided to pick up and come to a safe city for them. So a lot of these wealthy businessmen, merchants, traders came to Hamburg and brought with them their wealth. So it's kind of sad that the detriment to the rest of the area was actually a help to Hamburg. Now, as I said before, it was actually a fairly tolerant city, despite the strife going on around it. Now, while Catholics generally were not allowed to worship in public, they were allowed to worship in their homes, which is more than can be said for a lot of other cities in the area. They did, however, have one church that they were allowed to worship in. This church was located in the area called St. Pauli, on a road named Große Freiheit, which means great freedom. And it was named that because of the freedom of religion that was allowed there. Now, these days, there's a bit of a different kind of sense of freedom in St. Pauli, as it's kind of the party and the strip club area of Hamburg. So they've kind of taken on a different tone for the Great Freedom Road. But this church is actually still there, surrounded by bars and strip clubs and all kinds of other depravities, which I find quite interesting. This church is also notable because it possesses the oldest known Hamburgian art piece. If you want to follow me up over here, we can go take a look. Now, if you look at these two door handles, you may notice a slight difference between them. I don't know if you could recognize what kind of animal the one to the left is supposed to be, and the one to the right. Can you perhaps
The lion on the right?
Yes, so it's a lion on the right, that's correct.
And on the left, I can't really identify
It's
it.
kind of unidentifiable, huh?
Yeah.
Well, it actually also happens to be a lion.
Oh.
This was made in 1342, and as I said, it's the oldest surviving piece of art from Hamburg. Now, it looks a little bit different than the one to the right, because the man who designed it and created it, he had actually never seen a lion, either in person or in a picture. He created this out of a written description. And I gotta say, It's not actually too bad, though it can be confused with a monkey or a bear, all other manner of things. The more accurate looking piece of art was made about 500 years later by people who presumably had seen a lion, which is why it looks more like a lion. Now here we can actually, we would go inside for a short time. There's a couple of pieces of art that I would show them, in particular one that I like called Christmas Day 1813, which shows when Napoleon came and invaded the city, he had his troops quartered here. When he demanded from the citizens of Hamburg that they feed his troops, they refused, and so he rounded them all up and he put them inside of this church. So this piece of art kind of shows that. After that, I would kind of let them wander around a little bit. But unfortunately, the church seems to be closed right now, so we're not going to do any of that. But from here, we are going to move on to the next location, which is the Chili House. So let's get a move on.